Welcome to the Digital Intellect, bringing you the latest news from around the world. The news broke like a thunderclap, an announcement so unexpected, so monumental, that it seemed to freeze the nation in its tracks. Across living rooms, offices, and bustling city streets, Americans paused, eyes glued to their screens, as the story unfolded in real time. Walmart, the retail titan that had become a fixture in American life, was set to begin a phased exit from the U.S. market. The words scrolled across news tickers and flashed on smartphones, leaving millions in disbelief. The headline seemed surreal, more like a plot twist in a dystopian novel than the reality of June 13, 2025. For decades, Walmart had been synonymous with convenience, low prices, and the American way of life. In Bentonville, Arkansas, the heart of Walmart's empire, the company's CEO stood before a sea of cameras. His voice was heavy, his expression grave, as he described an untenable business environment. Years of escalating trade disputes, punishing tariffs, and mounting political pressures had forced the company's hand, leaving them with no viable path forward. This wasn't just another piece of corporate news, it was a seismic shift in American life. The announcement sent shockwaves through boardrooms, kitchen tables, and checkout lines alike. Reporters pressed for answers, their questions urgent and insistent, but the CEO's speech said it all. The promise of everyday low prices, a pledge that had defined Walmart for generations, was now impossible to keep. The decision, he explained, was the result of a long, bruising battle against forces that had fundamentally changed global commerce. The world Walmart once dominated had shifted beneath its feet, and the company could no longer compete on its own terms. In homes across America, families watched in stunned silence. For many, Walmart was more than a store. It was a symbol of affordable access to everything from groceries to school supplies. It was a place where paychecks stretched further, where communities gathered, and where the American dream felt just a little more attainable. The idea of it disappearing seemed unthinkable. The announcement challenged the narrative that protectionist trade policies would bring prosperity. Instead, it raised uncomfortable questions about the true cost of economic nationalism. Instead of revitalizing American industry, the policies had forced a corporate giant to retreat from its own country. The sight of empty aisles and shuttered warehouses became a stark symbol of unintended consequences. The CEO spoke of unprecedented challenges and disrupted supply chains, but what people heard was personal: job losses, store closures, and rising prices. The impact would ripple far beyond Walmart's walls, touching suppliers, employees, and entire communities. This was no longer an abstract debate about trade policy or corporate strategy. It was a kitchen table crisis. Families worried about how they would make ends meet, as the cost of everyday essentials began to climb. The exit was not just a business move, it would redefine the relationship between corporations, government, and consumers for years to come. The fallout was just beginning. Small towns that had relied on Walmart as an economic anchor now faced an uncertain future. Local businesses braced for change, unsure if they could fill the void left behind. America was left to wonder, what happens when its biggest retailer walks away? What does it mean for the fabric of daily life, for the millions who depended on Walmart for jobs, bargains, and a sense of community? The shockwaves had only started to spread. As the nation grappled with the implications, one thing was clear: America would never be the same. Long before the exit, Walmart had warned of the dangers ahead. Executives gathered behind closed doors, analyzing the shifting economic landscape and realizing that the challenges on the horizon were unlike anything they'd faced before. Their concerns weren't just for the company, but for the millions of Americans who depended on Walmart for affordable goods. As America's largest retailer, Walmart's warnings about tariffs were loud and public. The company took to the airwaves and press conferences, making sure their message reached not just policymakers, but everyday shoppers and families across the country. When tariffs hit, Walmart knew the costs would land on American consumers. Prices on everyday essentials, groceries, clothing, school supplies began to creep up, and shoppers felt the pinch at the checkout. Their business model, save money, live better, relied on sourcing goods globally at the lowest cost. Walmart's vast supply chain stretched across continents, bringing affordable products to shelves in every American town. Tariffs upended this, forcing a choice: absorb costs and lose profits, or raise prices and risk losing customers. Neither option was sustainable for long, and the pressure mounted with each passing month. Walmart pleaded with policymakers, explaining that tariffs were a direct tax on everyday necessities. Executives testified before Congress, urging leaders to reconsider policies that would hurt working families. The company argued these policies hurt the very families they were meant to help. For many, Walmart was the only place to stretch a paycheck, and higher prices meant tough choices at home. Despite urgent warnings, Washington pressed on. Lawmakers debated, but the policies remained, leaving retailers like Walmart to weather the storm alone. Walmart's financial reports showed the strain, with trade policy uncertainty cited as a major headwind. Profits shrank, forecasts dimmed, and investors grew uneasy as the company's future became less certain. The alarm bells were clear, the economic pressure was unsustainable. Every department felt the squeeze, from logistics to store operations, as the company struggled to adapt. The decision to exit was the final desperate siren. For communities, it meant lost jobs and fewer options, a ripple effect that would be felt far beyond Walmart's walls. The tsunami they warned about had finally hit. Walmart's story became a cautionary tale, a warning of what happens when economic policy collides with everyday life. Walmart's supply chain was a marvel, global, efficient, and built for low prices. Tariffs threw a wrench into this machine, suddenly making imported goods far more expensive. A container of goods could cost 25% more overnight, creating chaos and uncertainty. Walmart scrambled to reroute its supply chain, seeking alternatives in Vietnam, India, and Mexico. But shifting production isn't easy. No country matched China's scale. The transition was slow, costly, and incomplete. Store shelves reflected the strain: higher prices, empty spots, and missing products. The company, famous for having everything, now faced shortages. The tariffs exposed the vulnerability of even the mightiest supply chains. Walmart's global strength had become a critical weakness. The system that once seemed invincible was now bleeding. The company was pushed closer to its breaking point. The era of effortless global trade was over. The closure of thousands of Walmart stores across the country marked the end of a long, difficult battle for survival. For years, Walmart had been a fixture of Main Street America, a place where families shopped for everything from groceries to school supplies. But as the sun set on these once bustling supercenters, it was clear that an era had ended. Inside the company's Bentonville headquarters, the atmosphere was heavy with anxiety. Teams pored over spreadsheets that revealed a harsh reality. Costs were climbing, profits were shrinking, and the numbers simply didn't add up anymore. Every department felt the pressure, from finance to logistics. Tariffs, which many had hoped would be a short-term hurdle, instead became a permanent fixture. The ongoing trade war with China drove up the price of goods, squeezing margins tighter with every passing quarter. Walmart's leadership tried every strategy they could think of, renegotiating contracts, shifting to new suppliers, even absorbing some of the extra costs themselves. But each solution was only a temporary fix. The fundamental business model that had made Walmart a retail giant was now unsustainable. Empty shelves and closed checkout lanes became a common sight. The board of directors faced a stark and painful decision: continue operating at a loss, risking the company's future, or pull back to protect what remained. Leaked internal memos made it clear: the trade war was the main culprit behind the closures, a fact echoed in headlines across the nation. Shoppers noticed the difference too. Prices crept higher, and Walmart could no longer deliver on its core promise of everyday low prices. Staying open in the US would have meant betraying that promise, and risking irreparable damage to the brand's reputation. The announcement to staff was heartbreaking. For many, Walmart was more than a job, it was a community. The decision to close stores was a painful necessity, not a choice anyone wanted to make. The final boardroom vote was somber and heavy. No one wanted to be responsible for dismantling a pillar of American retail, but the writing was on the wall. The US market, once Walmart's crown jewel, had become a financial liability, too risky to justify further investment. As news of the phased withdrawal broke, shockwaves rippled through communities nationwide. The end of Walmart's era left many wondering what would fill the void on Main Street. Walmart's closure was a local tragedy in thousands of communities. In small towns, Walmart was often the largest employer and a community hub. When the doors closed, jobs vanished overnight. The ripple effect devastated small businesses that depended on Walmart's traffic. Economic decline followed, turning vibrant areas into ghost towns. For many, Walmart was the only source for groceries and essentials. Its loss created food deserts. The social fabric frayed as the central gathering place disappeared. The human cost was immense, measured in lost jobs, shuttered businesses, and broken communities. A decision made in a distant boardroom left a wave of despair across the heartland. Walmart's exit ignited a fierce national debate. Supporters of America First policies saw the pain as necessary to rebuild U.S. manufacturing. They argued Walmart's model relied on globalization that hurt American workers. For them, the closures were a step toward economic self-reliance. Critics, including economists and consumer advocates, called tariffs a catastrophic blunder. They pointed to Walmart's closure as proof that protectionism destroys more jobs than it creates. The debate raged on TV and social media, dividing the nation. Was the pain worth it for a new, resilient economy, or was America simply making itself poorer and less competitive? The country was split between two visions for its future. Wall Street reacted instantly to Walmart's announcement. The Dow plunged, triggering circuit breakers and widespread panic. Walmart stock lost half its value in a day, but the damage spread across the market. Investors questioned, if Walmart couldn't survive, who could? Major retailers' stocks plummeted and fears of a retail apocalypse grew. The turmoil sent a message to Washington. The trade war now threatened the entire financial system. CEOs across America scrambled to create contingency plans. The era of stable global trade was over, replaced by volatility and risk. International markets tumbled, fearing a weakened U.S. consumer. The verdict was clear: tariffs were a self-inflicted wound. The fallout was just beginning. The shockwaves rippled worldwide. Before its exit, Walmart fought desperately to adapt. Billions were poured into automation and technology to offset rising costs. The company tried to diversify sourcing, seeking suppliers outside tariff zones. The China Plus One strategy was slow and costly, never matching China's scale. Walmart shifted focus to groceries and US-made goods, but it wasn't enough. Consumers still expected Walmart's vast selection and low prices. Every adaptation came with new costs and challenges. The relentless pressure of tariffs was too much to overcome. Even Walmart's power and ingenuity couldn't beat government policy. The fight was valiant, but ultimately futile. The company's struggle showed the limits of corporate power. Walmart's departure ushered in a new reality for American consumers. Prices on everyday goods surged without Walmart's price pressure. Competing retailers raised prices, stretching family budgets to the breaking point. In many areas, Walmart's closure left a void: less choice, less convenience. Shoppers now travel farther and pay more for basics. Communities lost not just a store but a social hub. Walmart's exit became a symbol of the new risks in global business. The rules of globalization had changed. Political risk now trumped economic efficiency. The saga raised tough questions. Is self-sufficiency worth higher prices and fewer choices? The empty shells of former Walmart stores stand as monuments to this unresolved debate. The future of American commerce hangs in the balance.